some guys are driving, Ford F-150 blue collar working men that like to pick up a catalog in their truck and make a phone call. And it's probably a quarter of our customer base is that way. Okay. And they may never change. And then there's another, probably half that they don't want to talk to a human. They want to just go on their phone or on the website and, we want it to feel like Amazon where it's simple.
Right. Rob Lindemann, good morning. Thanks for joining me here on the podcast.
Sure. Good morning, Mike. Good to see you.
Well, so we've known each other for a while and really kind of followed your company evolve and grow and continue to innovate. For people kind of meeting you for the first time here, maybe you'll start with the brief history of how you got to here, how you grew the business, and kind of where your history took you.
Yeah. So becoming a chimney sweep is never anybody's plan A.
Right.
So let's just get that out there. So it was not my plan A. More my plan J. So, and that's typical of our industry. But my father was a part-time fireman and was cleaning chimneys on the side, cleaning gutters, doing odd jobs. I followed him around, was his little buddy when I was about 13 years old. And, we grew the business. It was relatively small while he was still working at the firehouse. And when I got out of college, I think there were 4 or 5 employees, and we grew it together for 15 years. And then I've been, running about 17 years on my own since then. I've got about 100 employees. We're in manufacturing, distribution, and service. But, our roots are in the service world.
It's funny. It's one of those, you're right. I think a lot of people are in careers that maybe aren't their first choice. And a lot of times it's about like, well, here are the interesting problems that I can solve here. And here are the people I can serve and that kind of thing. I always find that really interesting. Like for you, what was the bug that got you like, oh, this is pretty interesting. I think I could like this.
Yeah. I fell in love with the labor piece. That's what I signed up for, I should say. And I fell in love with the entrepreneurship because I really like working with my hands, building things, doing things. That was the appeal. Even out of college, I was like, I didn't really want to sit behind a desk. I wanted to work, work with men and build things. It was fulfilling. You get done, you can look back at what you accomplished throughout the day. But as the business grew, I fell in love with the entrepreneurship end of it and, learned more about how a business runs and operates. And that was kind of the journey that, I spent most of my career on.
That's great. And that's why you're not alone. I know for me, I started, I was like, oh, this, programming seems really fun. And I love solving problems and making things and all this kind of stuff. And then eventually I took the company over from a partner and kind of had this, realization the next morning that was like, oh God, am I the salesperson? Like what happened? That's not really what I signed up for. And all of a sudden that got really fun and interesting. And I feel like the Mike of 20 years ago would be shocked to hear that I love the entrepreneurial side and sales and all these other things that had nothing to do with why I started. So I think that journey is pretty common, I bet.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, you look back now and it's pretty large company, got about 100 employees and everyone's like, it's the typical overnight success story that took 30 years.
Exactly.
Like just, growing 10, 15% year after year after year after year. And next thing you know, you got, it gets big.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about, a lot of the topics on this podcast have been about how companies use technology to catalyze what their business is doing. And, one of the underlying questions is always, I always want to improve a business so that the people who are there, who know the business, who know the customers, who know the people can do higher level, more interesting things that only people can do. And not, we're not looking to cut labor or something like that. So for you, I'm curious, like how has technology grown the business? Because I know you went from, what you just said, servicing things. Now you've got, online and you're national and all these different, warehouses. Like how did technology drive that growth and how do you keep people part of the mix?
Sure. I think, it was really making data-driven decisions. And that probably stems back to 2008, 2009, when the financial market crash all happened and our phone just stopped ringing. And we're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? It's kind of panic. And we didn't have data. We were running on QuickBooks. We didn't track much. And, we were like, well, what can we do? And we were going to focus on the things that we can control. And one of the things was like, well, how many times did the phone ring yesterday? Rang 10 times. Well, what happened during those 10 times? Well, we got 7 appointments. What happened with those 7 appointments? Well, we went out there and, they didn't need us or they decided to do work. And So we got really fanatical about that. And it was as simple as writing it down on a piece of paper that we got 10 calls and we closed 7 to appointments. And, we worked through that scenario and then began tracking that digitally. And then, basically getting all the way from marketing to revenue, tracking that whole path and making all the decisions based on the data, like what actually gets the phone to ring with the customer that actually needs our services, right? So that whole space had to connect. So we were doing it manually for a long time, and obviously have had to have leverage all sorts of technology across the way till now. But
I'm curious. A lot of times when people jump into that, there ends up being like surprising things, like things you didn't expect to work, like whether it was marketing or what worked in the delivery part of the business. Like, what was something surprising you guys learned from data that's like, oh wow, I didn't know if we did that we would get the result of this that we wanted.
Yeah, well, we learned that people called us. They didn't really know what they needed or wanted. They just they had an issue with their fireplace and they hadn't looked at it in 10 years and didn't know what the options were, what was available. They didn't even know how to start the conversation with us. So, we made it a point to just say, well, let's make that conversation easy and just try to get someone to the house, make that low risk for them. So it'd be no cost. We'd come out there, we'd see what needs to be done because often we couldn't get there on the phone. Because they didn't know. Yeah. They didn't know what they needed until, they had someone that was, technician that was skilled in it, that was at their home and saying, all right, this is what you got.
It's great because I know there are a lot of businesses that are like that. And some of them, like if you're a doctor or something, the problem is people show up thinking they know too much and they've been on WebMD and they feel like they self-diagnose this crazy thing. So I'm curious for you, like, were people sort of like open to the idea that I don't know exactly what's going on here. I know I have this chimney and I'm supposed to do something about it. I have no idea what that is. Can you help me? Was that a pretty open conversation, do you think, or did you have to educate a lot?
When we made it no risk, they were really receptive to that. And, in this case, it was our current president, Michael Bodar. He came from like a different industry completely. He was in the nightclub business.
Oh, okay.
And he came in and he's like, why are we having these weird conversations with the customers about do they need an inspection? Do they need an estimate? Do they need this? Do they need that? How much are we going to charge? This is like having an argument at the maitre d' desk.
All right.
I just want to come in here and have a meal, right?
Yeah.
So we got that and just said, let's just make this easy for people because they often don't know what they need. And then, in terms of, following the technology towards how do our marketing dollars get the best output? Because, if we went to all the homes, there's some people that have no interest in doing business with us for whatever reason. They don't need us. They don't understand. So we wanted to avoid those. So when we tracked the whole distance of the transaction from the marketing to the revenue or no revenue, we could maximize where we put our dollars, and got the phone to ring in the right spots.
That's interesting. How about, tell me about it as you grew. We've had a lot of clients over the years where when you grow from one location, one warehouse, one whatever, and now all of a sudden you go to, 2, 4, 8, 10 and national, like what were some of the technology challenges that you had there and what did you do about it?
Yeah, so 1998, I opened up our second distribution center in Albany, New York. I was working with my dad, and I said, "Hey, I think we got a great opportunity out on the East Coast. Let's open up this warehouse." And he said, "Great. How much is it going to cost?" I gave him a number. It was probably 4 times that in terms of inventory. And he says, "That's fine." He goes, "We'll do it. If it doesn't work, you're going to be living in Albany, New York till you sell all the stuff." So that's how we launched out there, and the technology was legitimate, 2 QuickBooks files. And then this is 98. Yeah. So the guy that was running the warehouse in Albany would fax me the day's transactions. And then I would enter them into, the QuickBooks file that I had here in Illinois. Because back then you needed was ISDN line or
something,
some technology that was well beyond, what we could afford to do. So it was via fax. Those rolled up fax papers, and we're entering it in. And then eventually we got QuickBooks files coordinated. And then there was a whole Rube Goldberg contraption of QuickBooks files. Now we're running on, an ERP, NetSuite. But the evolution was, you could get absolutely strangled by transactions if you grew the business and you didn't have the right, vehicle to handle it all.
What was the point where you're like, okay, we're faxing, we're typing, and you got to a place where like, okay, we need a different, better system. Like what led up to that breaking point, and then what'd you do about it?
Yeah, I could recall like we used QuickBooks, and there was like this enterprise version of QuickBooks, and there would often be circumstances where someone would be yelling through the office, be like, "I need it in single user mode," everybody shut down, or someone would do like a QuickBooks update, and it would like take down the enterprise, it's
Yep.
just because everything had to be on the same platform, and it was just like there's got to be a better solution.
Yeah.
So we jumped into that and probably leapt into an ERP that was a lot larger than we needed at the time, but is sufficient, and it'll
Yeah.
be good for us for years.
And how about your online kind of presence has, scheduling and products and all that kind of stuff? When did that evolve, and what has that done for the business?
Yeah, I mean, we've always had it, but it's gotten more. More people want to go online, so we're actually launching a website. Our new contractor-facing website is going to be launching probably this week, because we got a hybrid of people. Some guys are driving Ford F-150 blue collar working men that like to pick up a catalog in their truck and make a phone call, and it's probably a quarter of our customer base is that way.
Okay.
And they may never change. And then there's another, probably half that they don't want to talk to a human. They want to just go on their phone or on the website, and we want it to feel like Amazon, where it's simple.
Right.
You just order your chimney stuff from us, and you don't have to think about it. So
it's interesting. So that customer dynamic is changing for businesses everywhere. So I'm curious for you. It sounds like like that 25% number that still wants a catalog. Sounds like you're probably on the high side of like people that want that physical stuff. So good that you recognize that. But what changes have you seen in both like your kind of providers and also your customers, and like how they want things? I assume it's shifting more digital, but what's that been like?
Yeah.
For years?
Yeah, it's definitely shifting more digital. And one of the interesting, I think, things, this is more on the service end in Chicagoland, we do about a third of our inbound appointments are online. So people just call and schedule the appointment online versus, phone in a call.
Yeah.
And we're turning that, those are more active buyers.
Really interesting.
When we track that to revenue, we're finding that that's a really good segment versus the people that actually had called and set up an appointment on the phone. So I don't know if they're more ready to buy. They're like, let's just get this done. I need some work. I'm gonna get the appointment on. They're busy. They're working. I don't know I don't know the why. I do know the results, and we're like, that's pretty interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask you if you discovered anything else. If you ever discover anything else, let me know, because that sounds like an interesting correlation. Yeah. I feel like I've heard that among a lot of other clients too, where that motivated buyer who is able to like do kind of like go down the journey a few steps on their own online, because they're kind of like, I'm looking to make something happen like now, as opposed to maybe the others kind of more of a shopper, let me find out about it kind of behavior.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm curious, and one of the things that we talked about before the interview was this idea of kind of balancing technology and humans. We've talked a lot about the tech side of it. What for you, what does that balance look like? What are you trying to do for customers and employees alike to make that work?
Yeah, as we spoke about, I just want to appeal to both, because people are on different spectrums of it. I feel like the most connected to their devices, I feel like it's our kids and our parents. Like I look around and I see like our parents' generation, and they're like glued to these phones, as the kids are, and we're maybe in the middle where we're like, I don't know, we've lived with it, we've lived without it, and this is a distraction. So yeah, in business, we're trying to accommodate to both of those categories. There's some people that like to get text messages. They want to be texting back and forth with our technician, and that feels like the most intimate transaction that they can have. Others are like taken aback by it. So it's be asking those questions like, how do you prefer us to communicate with you?
Yeah, there's so many options, right?
And there's even on the supply end where we're selling to contractors, there's some that are just like, oh, I love you guys because I can call Tim on his cell phone and he answers. I have a question, and that's important. Where there's
really something like using technology to cater to what customers actually want, and as like talked the last couple of minutes, different age groups and kind of experiences. Like people want things in different ways, and be able to meet them there is actually really really powerful for the business, obviously. I'd love to hear you talk about kind of relative to people not being able to leave their phones. Your decision to avoid digital stuff like curated and personalized for you. Talk a little bit about how you're kind of staying off the grid a little bit with your choices there.
Yeah, sure. This was, I guess, COVID born, right when kind of COVID hit the shores, and I was just engaged because, what was going to happen to the business, what was going on with the PPP, our phones just went dead. And, we were looking at maybe we got to cut half the staff. I mean, we can't hold the line for too long. And there was this bill, and, so I got engaged. I was reading the bill when it was just a bill before it even got passed, and was just consumed on all these things that were going on. And then all of a sudden, once I had figured out the business piece and, okay, this is actually, the phone started ringing because people were stuck in their homes, and, the business part was fixed. There was just craziness. I felt like there was a fire hose of, I don't know what was going on in terms of information. And I was like, I'm out. This is an optional thing in my life. I really want to worry about my business, my employees, my family, my friends, my community, the things that are actually were real. So I made a distinct decision then to just go off of what I call processed media, which was like any digital consumption that was curated for me, that it was a news article that's going to get me going, right? So I got the paper Wall Street Journal. That's what I read, and I look at it, and it's it's the same paper that the guy in New York is getting.
And
It's
you're
not
picking what you want to read. You're not
it's not a paper that's got a whole bunch of content that's going to trigger me to get pissed off or just drive more engagement. So I made a distinct decision that I was going to use the internet as a tool for me versus the other way around. So I took everything off of my device that was like, if I were to go on it and be like, why am I going on Facebook? It's like, take me for a ride.
Sure.
Right? Why am I going on this news site? Right? What I really want to know is kind of what's going on in the world in terms of business, but I want it on my own terms. There's certain things I want to know. So it was going to be a one-way tool for me is how I was going to use the internet.
Yeah.
I'm interested in how to leverage AI in my business. I'm going to go out to the internet and I'm going to grab that information. I'm going to do some research, and then that's it. That's how I'm going to use the internet. So.
No, it's great because it's funny. Some of the topics we've been talking a lot about with other CEOs have been, exactly that, like how to use AI. And I think that, the promise of technology is to kind of empower people. And a lot of it is personalization is sort of like the holy grail. But the problem is that personalization is being directed at you and not for you sometimes. So it's, how can I, to your point, how can I drive either outrage or a sale or all these kind of things, as opposed to, what if you could use, tools to help you get that piece of information you're looking for about ideas for AI quicker, just for you, without all the ads, all that kind of stuff. It's tough because it seems like all the money is in, driving it at you to, force a marketing or sales decision kind of thing, as opposed to how do I make myself smarter? It's a tough balance. And I love the idea of kind of going off grid. And it's funny as I'm thinking about it, when's the last time I had a physical paper in my hands? And the honest answer is I go to Ace to buy a paper every couple months to use for my smoker outside.
Right. Kindling.
Right. That's what I feel terrible. It's like these people put all this work into putting this paper together, and I'm just using it because I got to start my kindling. But yeah, I think social media as well. So I'm curious, like what other, how would you put that in perspective in your business? Do you encourage that of your team, or like, how do you use that idea in the,
no, I don't encourage that. Like the only digital social media I have is LinkedIn. I just straight up deleted it all. I'm like, I didn't like the way it made me feel and respond to things and act and perspectives. It just didn't feel healthy. I just said, I'm out. We have Facebook and Twitter and all that for the business, and someone's running the social media on that. But personally, it's just something I'm not, engaged in. I didn't find it useful for me. I mean, there were pieces that were useful. Like I'd love to see what some of my friends and their kids and things are doing, but it was really hard to just get the things I wanted out of it. Yeah. But in terms of, at work, I think we're just respectful of the work-life balance. And, in terms of communicating, I've given my cell phone out to thousands of business people, and I tell them every time, I said, I leave work at 4 or 5 o'clock and I turn into a husband and a father, so unless it's an emergency, call me anytime during work hours, but I'll answer in the middle of the night. But it better be in the middle of the night call.
Yeah.
That's worthy of it. So
No, that's
drawing those boundaries, and I think in our business in general, we're pretty respectful of that. Obviously, we are also in the emergency business where someone's air conditioning is out, like now, and they got an elderly, relative in the home. We gotta be able to attend to that and move as an organization. But in general, we have pretty good boundaries around that.
Yeah. I'm curious. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have that. If there are eras in their business, there's the era where they did everything for everybody and worked 24 hours a day. And then there's a moment where they're like, okay, forget all that. Were you always like that, or did you kind of figure this out along the way, or help with your dad, or when did that happen for you? Being able to do that?
Well, I did. I worked like crazy. I love working like 6-7 days a week until the December of 2000, where I ended up with stress-induced shingles and was in the hospital, taken out and having like panic attacks. So, I mean, I learned hindsight, it was a blessing. I learned that I'm just one person.
Yeah.
And I really needed to delegate and trust and empower people if I was going to build anything of any substance. That was, you can only take it so far. And I found out how far I could take it, and physically destroyed me. But it was amazing how you remove something from even an organization as important as you think you are. It's like a bucket of water. It'll just fill back. I'm just one of, now you call it 100 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm important, but I'm not as important as I think I am,
I usually like to wrap on thinking about advice you'd give yourself, going back to 2000. It sounds like maybe you kind of figured it out already, but like if you were to say an entrepreneur who's in that, 100-hour, constant always on kind of thing, what's the thing that you'd say, how do you save yourself from what happened to you?
Probably get out of your own way, and at some point you got to trust people. Trust people, and then hire people smarter than you. So, right now I can't think of a role that I would do a better job than the current person in the seat. Mm-hmm. Back then I thought, if it's got to be done right, it's got to be me. It's kind of attitude, and that was the wrong way. And then when you extend trust and like give someone a project that is like a stretch, man, they usually deliver.
Yeah.
It's when you're kind of hedging your bets with them is when they kind of this is kind of beneath me, or, but when you really let people prove themselves, they do a great job. So I think as a leader, it's just really, trusting that the people are going to, see your vision and push it forward because they want to push it forward because it's fulfilling for them. It's rewarding for them. It's all those things. So that would be me more, give up the controlling nature of trying to have my hands on everything.
Yeah, that's great. I know for me, a long time, whenever I thought about a new role, I always thought about how I would do it. And then one day I'm like, wait, that's the opposite of what we should be doing here. You should find someone who's way better at this and get them in there so that I can get out of the way. Then I think I've finally done that. So that's really good to hear. Well, so this has been great. Thanks for the insight and the idea to go get a Wall Street Journal today and see what that's like again. But it's really cool. Great catching up with you and hearing all the insights of your career so far.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks for everything you do. It's been a pleasure.